I'm Brittany, this is Shuheng, and welcome to Gaywatch, where we watch and read gay things. Thank you for being here today as we continue reading Volume 10 of Erha, and here's how it works. We read for a couple of hours, we take a small break around halfway through, and we typically read 40 to 50 pages. I have never read this series before and will react, discuss, and theorize while reading. Therefore, no spoilers are allowed in the chat or the comments for the sake of myself and any new readers. Before we get started, there are 3 things you need to know. We have book chats every Tuesday and Thursday at 2:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for YouTube members and patrons so that we can talk about what we read in the previous stream immediately before we read more in the next one. There are trigger warnings available down in the description box should you need them. And if you're looking for more queer bookish chats, there's also a link to the public version of the Gaywatch Discord down in the description box, and that's an evergreen link. You don't need to worry about that one expiring. Now, for today's poll, which we deliberated on at the end of the book chat today. Ending said poll, I gave a couple of possibilities on who could be dead by the end of this series. And it looks like, with 48% of the vote, one of our leads, potentially maybe both, but at least one of our leads. So either Moran or Wuan. I was being really optimistic about that possibility until Love mentioned in the book chats that Meat Bun's kind of notorious for killing off her lead characters. Now I'm concerned. Thanks, Love. The results of the poll didn't do anything to allay those concerns either. Thank you so much. And now it's about time where I say hi to chat. Hello, chat. How are we doing today? How nervous are we? Are we nauseous? Are we already laying down? We should be laying down, correct? Rereaders are probably feeling really great right now. They love knowing things. They love being... they love spectating. They love watching us all lose our minds. And occasionally they love lying to us. And if you've been tuning into the stream so far, you know how they did that. All right. We're on page... oh God, we're on page... hang on. There's a whole new way of doing things. We are on page 65 for chapter 300, which is called Hearts Aligned. I don't know, man. I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, we're not going to know. Basically, ever since volume 9, I feel like we've been on the first drop in a roller coaster. We've crested to the hill that was volumes 1 through 8, and now we're just plunging. And it's not going to let up until it's over. The light of the storm shone through the open doors of the hall, flashes of lightning cutting through the shadows on Shemei's face. Even in that burst of brightness, his eyes were dark and deep, as if not even holy fire could set them alight. The fiery blaze between Chuaning's hands guttered, and his jaw clenched. But he didn't take the bait. Nothing Shemei said right now could be trusted. I forgot to bring this up! There was always the possibility that Chuaning was just not gonna believe him. I can't believe I didn't bring that up. I meant to. I even write down notes for book chat and everything. Was that in there? No. But that's obviously a possibility. It better just be a at first thing and then it gets confirmed somehow. Because if Meat Bun is about to pull a Chuaning kills Taishanjun and then discovers that Moran's soul was still in there, it's not going to look good for me being like live in front of people. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I remembered! Sorry. Book chat people will understand this. I remembered the question. I could not remember the question that I had for you guys a little while ago. Because there have been other series. I'm so sorry for stopping like literally just two sentences in. There have been other series that have in their final volume or even the final like couple of volumes, if the last volume is entirely bonus stories, there's been one or what have you where the actual end of the narrative arc happened like partway through the second to last volume instead of at the end of the last volume. And that's my question. Is the rest of this volume the rest of the narrative? Or should I be expecting it to end sometime before then, halfway through 3/4, something like that? Like, is this all main narrative ending? Because that helps out with my expectations. Because if I'm thinking we have all of this to go through before we get to the end of the narrative, that changes things. Man, there can be... That's like a thing. That's a thing that I shouldn't know. That should be a surprise. I'm getting that from more than one person in the chat. All right. Just knowing that it could technically end at any time then. Because we're not nervous enough really. We don't have enough anxiety happening. So sure, it could end at any time. It could go to what have you. It could go to the end of the volume. It could end at the next chapter. Sure. I'm going to start at the beginning because we were literally like 1-2 short paragraphs in. So, trying this again, we're on page 65 for chapter 300, which is called Hearts Aligned. The light of the storm shone through the open doors of the hall, flashes of lightning cutting through the shadows on Shemei's face. Even in that burst of brightness, his eyes were dark and deep, as if not even holy fire could set them alight. The fiery blaze between Chu Waning's hands guttered, and his jaw clenched. But he didn't take the bait. Nothing Shemei said right now could be trusted. Yet Shemei clutched at that flicker of hesitation like a piece of driftwood amidst whirling waves. Shizun, you didn't really think Moran was fully dead, did you? You didn't really think? He gasped. Taishanjun was just a hollow shell? Shizun, think about it. What corpse could think so concretely, act so decisively? Who could create a revenant like that, with that technique? Not even the Zhenlong chess formation could accomplish it. We suspected that Moran was in there, but of course we suspected this after the scene between Moran and Taishanjun, after Moran had died. You know? Had to have, you know? Listen. We're continuing. Chu Waning said nothing. Don't you know? Shemei stared into Chu Waning's eyes, slowly unearthing this buried secret. There's a cognizant soul still in Taishanjun's body. A flinch. Earlier, Chu Waning's gaze had the hollow quality of a dead man walking, but now Shemei saw something shift inside those phoenix eyes. He let out a breath of relief, but stayed on guard. Shizun, you know my spiritual core is weak. I can't work powerful spells. I can't use the Zhenlong chess formation, but the medicinal arts have their ways. He remembered the moment he saw Taishanjun lying quiet and unmoving in that grave before the heaven-piercing tower, dead by his own hand. At the time, he had no idea where he'd gone wrong. His mind was blank with shock. How could his sharpest weapon, his ultimate soldier, take his own life? The flower of eightfold sorrows should have consumed the last of Moran's conscience ages ago. What could possibly torment him enough to drive him to suicide? Everybody fucking shut up. We are perpetually holding hands until the end of this volume. I just want you to know. That should be something we include at the top of each reading stream. Before I start reading, remind me, we all need to be holding hands. Your hand is never out of mine until the end of this volume. Spiritually, psychologically, emotionally, physically. Fuck it. When the 10 great sects, I can read, I promise. When the 10 great sects of the past life charged Xishang Peak and saw Moran's body, they wanted to have him drawn and quartered. I was among them. Leveraging my reputation as a famous healer, I persuaded them otherwise and preserved the body. He scanned Chu Waning's face for any trace of emotion. I couldn't afford to lose his strength, so I set myself the task of making him into a walking corpse. Even if he wasn't as strong as before, he would do. But you must know, he died longing for a certain person. An intense attachment was anchored deep in his heart, so strong I couldn't scrub it out of his soul, no matter what I did. Shemei took a step closer. I tried everything to banish it, but that soul never faded. That soul that led his barely lucid mind to the heaven-piercing tower. said Shemei carefully. The soul that yearned for you. I don't know what to do with that right now. I've got to shove that to the back of my mind. The fact that he could not break Moran's soul. We can't process that right now. He came to a stop in the middle of the hall. He could see Chuaning's ashen face, his tightly compressed lips, the protruding tendons of his hands. Nothing could be more reassuring than the sight of his pain and hesitation. Slowly, Shemei regained his earlier composure. That soul wasn't reincarnated. It lingered inside Tishanjun's corpse. That was why he was so obsessed with you after coming back to life. As for Mozongsha, I'm sure you could tell. He wasn't as besotted with you when he was reborn. He fell in love with you again later. I'm gonna let this fucker finish his sentence. He unveiled one truth after another, his eyes never leaving Chuaning's face. Tishanjun's dead body contains his stubbornest love for you. Chuaning's fingertips were trembling. Shemei licked his lips, slipping forward like a wily snake, his words a sibilant appeal. Shizun, can't you see? I just need 30 more people. 30 more, in exchange for Moran's last soul. Won't you say yes? What kind of dumb-ass motherfucking offer is that? What kind of... Who do you think you're talking to? Who are you talking to? You really never understood. What the fuck is happening? What? He doesn't understand a goddamn thing. Does he? Wind howled outside. Everything lost in the wild tempest. He awaited Chuaning's reply. It was a generous offer, he thought. The man before him looked aloof, but he destroyed both his lives for love. Shemei was certain he would agree. Like there's no such thing as a secret third thing? Chuaning lowered his gaze. Nobody could see his expression. You say there's still a wisp of soul inside him. If 30 people are sacrificed to pave the rest of your road home, you'll spare him. Exactly. Chuaning paused, murmuring to himself. Then all those things he said when he saw me again were genuine. We don't have time to dwell on that either! Anyone could be convinced as long as one grasped their weakness. Even the Beidou immortal was no different. Convinced of his success, Shemei relaxed. That's right. It was all genuine. Though he's not like Moran before he was marred. He still has a soul, at least. He still has his own mind. Shizun, Shemei said sweetly. Listen to me for once. You, me, and him. All three of us will be much better off. 2 of them will, at least. Chuaning was still looking at the floor. He sighed. Shuming Jing. Do you remember the wish you wrote in your letter when you made your formal request to become my disciple? That unexpected question brought Shemei up short. After some thought, he answered, "For succor and safe harbor." Saying it aloud gave him an ominous feeling. But at the time, I was thinking of Shizuna's family. I wasn't talking about bringing the butterfly-blown clan home. Chuaning asked another question. I'm getting a hold of myself. Chuaning asked another question. Do you know what wish Moran wrote when he became my disciple? What? Chuaning finally looked up, his eyes dull with an apathy even more profound than his earlier silence. He said he wanted a holy weapon like Tianwen, so he could save more lives. Did Chuaning just say... Did Chuaning just say, you know what your problem is? You're focused on yourself. My man out here sees other people. You are entirely fucking selfish. Oh my god. What? Chuaning finally looked up. Sorry. I'm too, that was so masterful. He spoke so coolly and without feeling, recounting his beloved's bygone wish like it was an unimportant detail. Before Shemei could react, golden light flooded the hall. A wave of ferocious spiritual energy surged through the air, keeping anyone from coming closer. Shemei snapped back to his senses. Chuaning, he screamed, a shrill and twisted sound. Chuaning, have you gone mad? You're mad! He threw himself against that blinding light in despair and fury, trying to get to the white-robed man at its center. At his side, Muyan Li reached for him, spoke to him, helped him, but it was no use. Decimate. Retract. No, stop! As Chuaning's voice echoed from within the golden blaze, Shemei flew into a greater frenzy, face warping, as he howled and raged and cursed with all his might. But the golden light surged and crested. That blinding glow seared itself in his eyes, leaving splotchy after-images dancing in his vision. Then the light went out. The wind stilled, leaving only silence. Chuaning stood, white-faced, while Shemei knelt haggardly on the ground. The tide of spiritual energy slowly ebbed away. After a beat, they both heard a muffled rumble from the direction of the mountains. The sound of Taishanjun's corpse being crushed to ash. Shemei stared at Chuaning. The furious emotions warring on his face had died, leaving behind darkness. His hatred and his wrath cracked open to reveal raw terror. He didn't know what he was afraid of. Was it Chuaning, who could bear to kill Moran with his own hands? The pendulous uncertainty of his own future. What was scaring him? The world was already ending. Slowly, Shemei found his voice. He's dead? He's dead? Chuaning, you killed him? At the Red Lotus Pavilion, he once shielded you and begged me to corrupt him instead of you. But you killed him in cold blood. How could you? His terror turned into crazed laughter. He had no reason for mirth, but he threw his head back and cackled anyway. Beside him, Muyan Li was crying. Anan, enough. Her words couldn't get through to him. Enough. But Shemei only laughed. Golden tears slid from his cheeks to splash on the floor. He's dead. Taishanjun's dead. So be it. It's over. Well played. Chuaning, you heartless bastard. What an iron will you have. Chuaning stood rooted to the spot, expressionless. He resembled a corpse. He was a corpse. Shizun, I underestimated you. Shemei's voice shook. You're even more ruthless than I imagined. It was as if Chuaning had lost the last of his warmth. He'd thought Moran was gone, but now he'd learned one of his souls still existed right here in his body. A shattered version of Mo Wei Yu yet existed. But he'd reduced those shards to dust. Yes, he was ruthless. He had nothing to say in his defense. The boy, the youth, the man, his beloved who laughed and cried, in whole or in parts, his dearest, the only one in the world who respected him, indulged him, and didn't fear him. The lover who'd shielded him from catastrophe with his own flesh and blood. The man who'd been devoured by the flower of eightfold sorrows in his place, who'd become the Lord of Darkness and tyrant over the world in his stead. The dummy who'd given everything to protect him the year he would have turned 16, would never come back. This is italicized. So I can save some... So I can save more earthworms when it rains. Shizun, I brought you some pear blossom white. The disciple present I have for you is really, 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 really ugly. Waning, I missed you. Once he'd smilingly copied out the words, to build countless houses that can shelter all the people in this world who don't have homes, so everyone can smile. Repay kindness. Do not seek revenge. One moment. I was wondering the exact wording of what his mom used to say to him. And it's even more pointed it on the nose about certain things. Yet he drifted in a sea of blood for 2 whole lifetimes. Do not seek revenge. Do not seek revenge. Me, I don't have any particular ambitions. I'm just happy to learn my spells. If anything happens, I'll be able to save a few more people. In his youth, while he was still lucid, Moran had once earnestly expressed this wish to Chuaning. Back then, he'd hoped from the bottom of his heart to help more people. Before he'd been subsumed within Taishanjun's shadow, he'd stubbornly adored every wondrous living thing, such that he'd willingly give his soul to protect everyone who'd ever treated him with kindness. I might be a little dumb, but I'll do my best. Shizun can't blame me if I've tried my best, right? The young man in Chuaning's memories had chuckled and beamed as he made this appeal, scratching his head. His dimples were so sweet and deep they seemed to brim with pear blossom white, leaving Chuaning with a lifelong intoxication. I mean, I'm cursing a lot about Meat Bun right now, but I'm adding her prose to that real quick. He closed his eyes. His hands had finally begun to shake. He felt dizzy. A gentle breeze seemed to brush against his face, kissing his tear-soaked lashes. He thought he could hear Taishanjun's voice, uncharacteristically soft and gentle. The words echoed in his ears as if murmured against Chuaning's cheek. My reputation and my dreams, my blood and flesh and beating heart, my soul, my corpse, and the ashes I've become. I'm sorry. That's all I ever had. And I've laid it all at the altar. I've done everything I can. Waning, take care. Chuaning's head snapped up, phoenix eyes swimming with tears. In the fractured light he seemed to see Taishanjun's soul before him, handsome and kind, smiling with joy and grief. Moran. That soul that should have stayed as pristine as plum blossoms in winter shimmered before him. He bent to take Chuaning into his arms, kissing him and slipping his fingers between his lovers, and in Chuaning's embrace he scattered like fallen petals. Something's happened! A Tianyin Pavilion disciple charged into the hall, shouting, "Something's happened!" We don't need that. Hang on. That's not the window that I should have. Here we are. We didn't. Like right now, we didn't need that right now. The visual aid? We really needed the visual aid. Now I've got a beef with the artists. Who made this decision? I want a name. Mu Yanli was the only one in the room who could still be considered calm. She turned, eyes glittering with tears, and snapped, "We know what happened to Taishan Jun, don't..." "What?" The disciple froze, then stamped his feet in baffled frustration. "Not Taishan Jun. All the cultivation realm sects are coming for us. They're gathered at the base of the mountain right now." That's the end of the chapter. We're on page 75 for chapter 301, which is called The Past Replayed. I'm legitimately not accessing emotion right now. Because we're at the last however many pages, because you guys said that I shouldn't be aware. We're down to the last thing. So it's like we're getting towards the end of the sentence, but we're not at the end of the sentence yet. She hasn't finished speaking to me. So it's not over till it's fucking over. It's also not over till I see a body. That's how this goes. This is how we stay sane. The newly formed volunteer army stood at the foot of the mountain, soaking in the rain. Cultivators from every sect were present. The space-time gate had only been open a few days. No one knew what was happening, and all that lay before them were boundless dangers and lurking threats. This rudimentary alliance was an uneasy one, each party weighing their own options. Few were willing to stand in the vanguard. They feared the Zhenlong pawns lying in wait at this strange Shuheng Peak. Worried they'd meet those revenant grandmasters they'd faced at Mount Jiao. They looked up at the peak, eyes wide and fearful. Inside that rain-battered Wushan palace, was there a slumbering monster ready to awaken and tear them all to shreds? Someone holding a torch enchanted against the rain looked up and muttered, "I really didn't expect Tianyin Pavilion to do something like this. I still feel like I'm dreaming." Enough. Zhen Zongming of Baton Manor laid a hand on his shoulder. "If you've got the energy to moan and groan, you might as well focus on a plan of attack. Let's get this nightmare over with." "I'm afraid it might not be that simple," someone else replied, expression somber. "Mu Yanli is of godly descent, and Hua Binan is one of the greatest medicinal cultivators of our time. As for that Emperor Taishan Jin, I mean Moran, that guy's powerful and vicious. We'd best be careful. No one can let down their guard." Several heads in the crowd nodded in agreement. Had Shui Meng from the past life been standing among them, he'd have surely thought all the twists and turns of life had brought him right back to the beginning. The scene was identical to that night long ago, when the 10 great sects had surrounded Shuheng Peak and Taishan Jin swallowed poison. But the one among their number was not that Shui Meng, but rather the young man who just lost his parents. His features were still handsome, but his face was haggard. He wore not the bright silver-blue armor of Shuheng Peak, but a plain set of blue robes, his ponytail fastened with a strip of white cloth as a sign of his mourning. "No more chatter," said Shuimeng. If we waste time here, things will only get worse. Who cares about who's most vicious or keeping your guard up? If you're scared, stay here. You don't have to come. Everything proceeded along the same bygone tracks. As soon as Shuimeng spoke up, those around him burst into chatter. Once again, the crowd piled on. Shui Gongzhe, watch your tongue. What do you mean, scared? A cultivator of Jiangdan Hall glared at him, her slender brows twisting. That's right, look how brave you are. Just a few days ago, you brainlessly ran off to Wushan Palace to kill Taishan Jin. How did that go? Shuimeng fell silent. Weren't you defeated? Didn't Mei Shishang have to help you clean up your mess? You! A slender hand blocked Shuimeng's way. Silver bells tinkling on a pale wrist. Shuimeng snapped, This isn't your business. But Mei Han Shui looked cheery. Of course it's my business. You're the son of my benefactors. He turned to smile at that girl, who'd flushed red upon realizing he'd witnessed her rudeness. And of course I have to point it out when such a pretty lady speaks so coarsely. How else is she to correct her mistakes? He continued earnestly, helping Shuimeng is helping a friend, not cleaning up a mess. With the heavens as my witness, I ask the lady not to impugn my honor. Everyone in the Jianghu knew of Mei Shishang's allure. The girl fell instantly silent, her face redder than a pig's liver. At the sight of her flustered face, the young man with her felt the horns of cuckoldry sprouting from his head. He scoffed loudly. How interesting. Shui Gongzhe, you're a lion-hearted hero and the rest of us are mewling cowards, is that right? Why don't you go up there first and scout for us then? You know Xishang Peak best, and everyone's saying Emperor Taishan Jun is the previous incarnation of your cousin Mo Wei Yu. He's not going to kill you, is he? You're the safest of any of us. At the mention of Emperor Taishan Jun, many in the crowd looked abashed. When Mo Zongxue had first appealed to them, they'd called him a liar. Yet since then, everything that came to light had proven his words true. Many of them felt their consciences aching. Well, it's about fucking time! Still, not everyone agreed. An old cultivator twirled his mustache and cleared his throat. That Emperor Taishan Jun's identity remains to be confirmed. Shuimeng shot him a chilling look. Confirmed how? What I mean is, Taishan Jun looks like Moran, but he might not really be his previous incarnation the way Moran said. With masks of human skin and Zhenlong chess pieces, nothing's impossible. Like, technically, sure, but like at this point? Standing in the middle of a volcano. Are we sure this is lava? I don't... Technically. That's right. I still think the murderer at Guiyue was Moran himself. Forget past or present incarnations. That's just an excuse. A pretense. Even now, there were those who insisted Mo Zongxue had been lying, that they'd done nothing wrong in condemning him. Some of them had made eloquent or scathing speeches against him at Tianyin Pavilion. Some had thrown stones and rotten vegetables during those 3 days of public trial and ridiculed him from the crowd. Admitting Mo Zongxue was right was tantamount to admitting they'd been tricked, manipulated into slandering a good man's name. The thought was much too embarrassing. Do not fucking get me started on that bullshit. Being so deep into something that admitting you were wrong would be too embarrassing, despite the fact that your continued acting as if you aren't wrong does more damage. Don't get me started. Admitting fault often took more courage than committing the fault in the first place. None of them were brave enough. I mean, this actually brings up like two aspects. One, what I just fucking said and how I'm just on fire with that kind of thing. But then also, it is nice to have it admitted that it is indeed, like, it is a brave thing to be so whole ass committed to something and then turn around and say, actually, maybe I'm wrong. That is a difficult thing to do. And for people who genuinely do that, we should approach them with empathy and, outstretched hands, assuming that the apology and the reckoning is actually in good faith and genuine. There is also that. But I'm in the mood to be righteously angry right now. So that's what I'm choosing. Better to never allow Moran's name to be cleared than to abandon their veneer of righteousness. No matter how much suffering or scorn Moran endured, no matter how many accusations he bore, regardless of the 2 lifetimes he'd spent in agony, he would stay a sinner. To these so-called gentlemen, another's innocence would always be subordinate to their own pride. That's it. I'm writing down the page number. It's page 78, for those who are wondering. Mei Hanshui's eyes curved into smiling crescents. Sun Daozhong, you're truly possessed of unbending courage. The old geezer blinked in confusion for a long moment before he realized it was a jibe. Furious, he would have rushed toward Mei Hanshui if the abbot of Wubei Temple hadn't stopped him. That's enough, said Master Shuming Jing. Benefactors, please stop arguing and listen to this old monk. It doesn't matter who Taishanjun is. What matters is what we should do when we go up the mountain and how we should split our forces. He turned to Shui Meng, conciliatory. Shui Gongxia, you've dueled Taishanjun. In your view, how strong is he as a fighter? Shui Meng clenched his jaw, hands tightening into fists. Better than all the sect leaders present combined. Ha! Sun Daozhong raised one bushy eyebrow. Darling of the heavens indeed. Look how readily he praises others and humbles himself. Master Shuming Jing, on the other hand, looked shocked. Which is to say, he's likely much stronger than Chuzongsha. No wonder Chuzongsha was kidnapped. Kidnapped? Don't we all know the filthy things that happened between Chuaning and Moran by now? If you ask me, he wasn't kidnapped at all. Neither is Taishanjun some kind of past self. This whole thing is Moran's doing. And Chuaning's in on it too. If you don't believe me, let's march up there and see. Yeah, let's march up there and see. The more we sit here and talk, the angrier I get. Shui Meng went pale as a sheet. Only a few weeks ago, he would have been first to snarl and punch that bag of bones face in. But he'd only just learned the truth about his Shizun and Moran's relationship himself. The idea was still too repellent. He stood unmoving, face crumpling in silence. A tall silhouette draped in pale green robes slid coolly in front of him, saving him from that painful predicament. Jing Shi's voice rang out. What a bold declaration, Sun Daozhong. If things aren't as you say, once we march up the mountain, perhaps that conniving tongue of yours needn't remain in your mouth. Like, I've got my issues with Jing Shi, but that was brutal. A muscle twitched in the old Taoist's jaw. His lips moved as if to speak, but he didn't dare talk back to Jiang Shi. After some half-hearted muttering, he fell silent. Jiang Shi shot a look at Shui Meng, but said nothing. He lowered his head in thought, then turned back to the others. There's no time. Let's decide whom each of us will target, then begin our offense. His eyes roved over the other sect leaders and elders, acknowledging each of them. Aside from the Zhenlong pawns, who else do we know is atop Xisheng Peak? We'll certainly run into Muyan Li, someone replied immediately. Has anyone here fought her? A female cultivator raised her hand. I matched her for a while during the chaos. How was she? Asked Jiang Shi. The girl thought about it. 3 elders should be enough to pin her down. Good. We need 3 elders to keep her occupied once the battle starts. Any volunteers? Xisheng Peak detested Muyan Li. 3 of their elders immediately stepped forward. Xuanji, Tanlong, and Lu Sun. They were sect siblings and powerful in their own right, skills in the roles of healer, attack, and support. Jiang Shi agreed without hesitation. Who else? Asked Jiang Shi. Some of her personal guard from Tianyin Pavilion. Exact numbers unknown, but there's at least 600 or 700 of them. Their strength is also difficult to estimate. Wubei Temple's fighting style is closest to Tianyin Pavilion's. Jing Shi turned to Master Shuming Jing. Abbot, can your disciples target Tianyin Pavilion's people? Master Shuming Jing weighed his options. The negatives were obvious. They didn't know how many Tianyin Pavilion guards were present or how strong they were. It was one thing if they were weak, but Wu Bei Temple would be decimated if they were strong. The positives, however, were tempting. If they were occupied with Tianyin Pavilion, they wouldn't have to face Emperor Taishanjin, the greatest terror on the peak. At last he nodded. This old monk will gladly do his duty. Which leaves Hua Binan. Jiangshi sighed, closing his eyes. That one's clear-cut. Though Gaywatch cannot profess to full knowledge of his every technique, he is at least from our sect. When the battle begins, I ask the elders of my own sect to go after him. Show him no mercy. Only the Zhenlong pawns and Taishanjun remained. Jiangshi's gaze swept over the assembled crowd, but other than a few familiar faces, the rest seemed afflicted with a sickness of the spine. Their heads bent so low some rubbed their necks as though they ached. Palace leader? Ming Yulo nodded. Tashui Palace stands ready. Jiangshi turned to the head of Shanqing Pavilion. The elder nodded, as do we. The remaining sects were either cowardly or truly unsuited for combat. As their leaders hesitated, one mumbled, Since Taishanjun is capable of tearing open the space-time gate, the strength of these sect leaders is definitely not enough. Right? Wouldn't we just be throwing our lives away? Another lamented, if only Rufeng sect was still here. Cultivators from all 72 cities and all those city lords. A crying shame. I won't get started, because if I do, I will never finish. A Jiangdong Hall cultivator raised her voice. Where'd Yuangxi go? Isn't she a good fighter? She's probably worth 10 of Nangonglu. She's definitely on par with a sect leader. Run off, has she? You fuck it! Again, if I get started. Jiangxi's face went dark with rage. Before we left, he said scathingly, we settled refugees at Gaywatch. We needed a cultivator to stand guard in case the Zhenlong chess army came to our doors. No one else volunteered. Yuangxi stayed behind. Embarrassed, the cultivator said, Oh. Look at you, crying for a girl to come save you, Jiangxi continued. Some heroes you are. And that just about sums up my feelings on Jiangxi so far, actually. On one hand, you're like, yeah, defend Yuangxi. And then on the other hand, you're like, can you do it in a not shitty way, though? Silence fell over the group. No one was willing to take the lead. Perhaps we should take more time to consider, the pretty sect leader of Jiangdong Hall ventured. After all, this isn't a game. Why not wait a little longer? The word wait made Shuimeng so furious his lips went white. Struggling to control his temper, he asked, How much longer do you want to wait? Will things get safer if we stay here? It's not like we can just run up there. We'll be going to our deaths. Everything depends on this moment. Safety first, young Master Shui. Master Shuming Jing spoke up as well. Shui Gongzhe, prudence is the greatest virtue right now. The world's in chaos and the space-time gate has reappeared. No one can say what will happen next. The best the cultivation world has to offer are gathered here, but if the worst happens and all is lost, who will be left to take responsibility? That's right. If our sect leaders all perish here, what will we do? Try as he might, Shuimeng could no longer hold himself back. His head snapped up, revealing bloodshot eyes. You're already thinking about what to do if we fail. Your sect leaders aren't dead. What about Xisheng Peak? Everyone abruptly recalled the unjust accusations leveled at the sect leader and his wife, and their untimely deaths. The cultivators averted their eyes or lowered their heads in shame. Again, it's about fucking time. What is Xisheng Peak supposed to do now? Shuimeng's voice was hoarse. I've lost my cousin, my Shisheng, my mom and dad, and now even my Shizhen is... His lashes quivered. The jet of his throat bobbed as he tried desperately to swallow his agony back down into his stomach, but it was too much. He couldn't bear it anymore. He blinked slowly. You fear death because you still have reasons to live. I don't, so I'm not afraid to die. Mei Shui frowned and stepped toward him. Shuimeng! But why should he listen? No one left on Earth could stop him. If you're all afraid, said Shuimeng, I'll go myself. Way too much happened in the last, 5 sentences. I need to catch my breath. Hang on. From Shuimeng being suicidal to Shuimeng being like, I'll fucking go, to Mei Shui immediately stepping in and being like, excuse the hell out of you. What do you mean you're suicidal? That's we're just gonna take a second and have some tea. Young master! The disciples of Shisheng Peak tried to pull him back, but Shuimeng's mind was set on vengeance. He strode off without looking back. The hurt and anger he'd bottled up slid down his cheeks as tears, soaking into the ground where no one could see. Jiangshi stood in the rain, staring at his retreating silhouette. You... At the sound of his voice, Shuimeng walked faster to get away. His long tongue had shattered. He didn't even have a proper sword anymore. But he turned doggedly toward the lofty spires of Shisheng Peak, leaving them all in his wake. After some hesitation, Jiangshi shouted hoarsely, Shuimeng! He rushed to catch up to him, but before he could lay a hand on Shuimeng's shoulder, the young man whirled, his bright bird-like eyes flashing with rage. Go away, he snarled. Don't touch me! He flung Jiangshi's hand aside, refusing to let him get a word in, and started up the mountain. That's a scene break. If I had voted in the poll that I put in the field at the top of the stream, my money would have been on Shuimeng. So it's not looking great for me right now. Not that we can't all be right, because this is Meat Bun. But I'm just saying. Not feeling great. Moss carpeted the stone steps. Bamboo swayed in the mountain forests. Shuimeng ran, panting, through the torrential storm. The rain softened the world around him into a dreamlike blur. Here, Madame Wang had once gardened by moonlight and watched a peony unfurl its petals. There, Shui Jingyang had returned in glory from some mission or other, his body strong and his smile bright with victory. As Shuimeng passed a set of steps, he saw Shemei murmuring with his head bowed. When he ran by the hero's pillar, he saw Moran staring up at the moon. Through that curtain of water, he saw the noisy bustle of disciples returning after their classes, filling the halls and bridges with lively chatter. He ran as if fleeing for his life, like a tiger seeking refuge in a far-off forest. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw an old peach tree. A younger version of himself knelt beneath it, performing the formal bows before looking up, smiling, at the white-robed Chuaning. The disciple Shuimeng greets Shizhen. He squeezed his eyes shut. Too much of his past lay on Shisheng Peak. Every memory seared his insides. All the splendid bonfires that burned here had become grief-choked ash. The storm beat at Shuimeng as he ran, chased by his recollections of the past. Don't follow me. Don't make me see these things, he muttered, weaving between ghosts, running away from the happiest days of his youth. By the time he stood before the peak, he was soaked from head to toe. a phoenix chick with bedraggled wings, shivering in the damp. It was cold, so cold his bones had turned into ice. Rain dripped from his lashes as he narrowed his eyes, staring up at the solemn majesty of the palace, lit dimly with candles. So this was Shisheng Peak in the past life. He hadn't paid much attention when he'd come to kill Taishan Jin. His eye snagged on a trio of gravestones erected before the heaven-piercing tower. He'd never seen something like this in his own sect, and he couldn't help taking a closer look. One of them said deep-fried Empress. One had been knocked over, the stone lying askew in the mud. The third was very old and very plain. The murky silhouette of a man stood before it, his back to Shuimeng. His robes were blood-stained, his sleeves broad enough to brush the ground as he ran his hand over the words engraved on the stone. Shuimeng flinched. It was as though an arrow had pierced his head. All the blood in his body poured into his skull as he shouted, "Moran!" He groped for Longcheng to carve him in half, but the scabbard that usually hung from his belt was gone. It was a beat before he remembered Longcheng was broken, shattered the first time he crossed swords with Emperor Taishan Jin. But the man seemed deaf to his shouts. He knelt in front of the grave, slowly, as if, after an exhausting journey, he'd come at last to his final destination. Shuimeng watched as he pressed his forehead to the icy stone. Flame flared to life in Shuimeng's palms, golden light sizzling. He leapt forward and slammed the spell down on Taishan Jin's back. There was a massive boom. Yet when the light faded, his fire hadn't injured anyone. There was only the shattered moss-covered gravestone. Stunned, Shuimeng looked around. There was no Emperor Taishan Jin, no wraith dressed in black, no one at all. He was alone. Rain poured around him. All the plants bent under its force, as if to leave him the last thing standing on earth. But in the rustling of the trees in the wind, he seemed to hear an army crouched in the forest and the shrubbery, ready to launch an attack at any minute. "Taishan Jin! Taishan Jin!" Shuimeng's howls were shattered by the thunder and ground to dust. Had he been mistaken? How could he have been? That figure had been real and vivid. He'd been standing just there, reaching out to touch the gravestone. The gravestone had said... Shuimeng froze. He bent down, crouching in the mud to piece the stone he'd shattered back together. Halfway through, his blood ran cold. The inscription said, "Grave of my teacher, Chuaning." Whose grave was this? Whose grave? Shuimeng reeled backward. Lightning flashed, its light stark on his horrified face. He shook his head, mumbling, No, impossible. How could it be? He swallowed, forcing his panic down. Still crouched on the ground, Shuimeng took a breath and shook his head to clear it. He squinted down at the gravestone. Its surface was mottled. It looked at least 10 years old, not new. The front was unevenly gouged, as if some original engraving had been scraped off and replaced with those 6 words. Grave of my teacher, Chuaning. Did his Shizun from the past life lay buried here? Shuimeng's lips were bloodless. His whole body was shaking. His heart churned with something. Heartbreak, rage, or fear he couldn't say. He buried his face in his hands, scrubbing the rainwater away. His head was a mess. What kind of tangled threads of love and hate were knotted through that lifetime he didn't know about? He couldn't guess. Just as he couldn't guess what had once been inscribed into this gravestone, or why it was later changed. He didn't know any of it. Shuimeng pressed his hands over his eyes. When he opened them, that black and gold silhouette had reappeared. This close, Shuimeng could see the gold embroidery of landscapes and howling dragons chasing tigers on his clothes. The wraith wasn't quite a soul, but it wasn't a living person, neither flesh and blood nor a disembodied spirit. The apparition gazed up at the heaven-piercing tower, and Shemei seemed to hear him murmur, "Shizun, please, pay attention to me." That voice was so faint it hardly sounded real. "I want to come home. I'm coming home." Confusion and bewilderment colored his voice. "Coming home, Shizun." Lightning forked across the sky with an almighty boom, like a hammer struck deep into the earth. The mountains around them seemed to quake, a vibration that left his bones buzzing. "But I don't have a home." The black-robed silhouette spun around. Even through the deluge, Shemei could see his face. Moran's face, with perfect clarity. But Moran couldn't seem to see him. "I don't have a home," he mumbled. "I want to go back. I want to go back," he cried, fretful and despairing. Let me go back. Let me go back. I want to see him. I want to see him." In the flashing lightning and pealing thunder, that black apparition rose into the air, catching Shemei off guard. An arctic gust of wind tore through his clothes, the bone-chilling cold even more intense than the rain. Stricken, Shemei collapsed to the ground, eyes squeezed shut against the gale. "I can't die. I need to see him." Moran's howl echoed in his ears as the wraith swept toward the back mountains of Shuheng Peak. By the time Shemei came to his senses, there was no trace of that ghostly apparition, but a blinding red light had lit up the faraway mountains. What had happened? What was that shadow? A ghostly soul. Face bone white, Shemei stood unmoving until he felt a hand on his shoulder. Shemei jolted, mad and helpless. He cried, "Who's there? Who's there?" Mei Han Shui pressed down firmly. "Don't worry, it's just me." From the forest behind him came a hideous-looking member of Tashui Palace, with pale green eyes Shemei knew well. It was Mei Han Shui's glacier-cold elder brother, wearing a mask of human skin. Mei Han Shui stepped out of the trees holding two swords. One was his own holy weapon, Shufeng, while the other, Shuheng. Mei Han Shui pressed Jiang Shi's sword into Shemei's shaking hands. "Jiang Zhengman asked me to bring this to you. He said that you could use it, that you shouldn't reject it for petty reasons." The younger brother looked at Shemei curiously. "Can I ask you a question? Who is Jiang Shi to you, really?" "It's time." His elder brother flatly cut him off. He shot a glance at Shemei. "Let's go to Wushan Palace and see how Chuzongsha is faring." He prodded Shemei's shoulder with the hilt of Shufeng, then dove into the curtain of rain. His twin sighed. He patted Shemei on the head, then followed his brother toward the storm-swept Wushan Palace. There's too much happening. I need to hit something. There's too much happening. Also, or not even also. First of all, how little faith do we have? And it's me, I'm bitches. How little faith do we have in Moran's soul, even after finding out that Hua Binan couldn't destroy it? How little faith do we have in his soul that, you find out that Taishanjun's body has been destroyed, which is a whole other thing, and you think that Moran's soul is so weak that it would be destroyed along with it? Uh-huh. Okay. All right. To say nothing of the brothers showing up to back up their boyfriend. we need a break. We're a little bit past the time we need a break. We need a break, okay? I need to do laps around something. All right? This is 2. All right. When we come back in a few minutes, we'll be on page 89 for chapter 302, which, everybody calm down. It's a very chill title. It's called Soul Sundered at Wushan Palace. Not a big deal. Very easy breezy second half we're in the mood for. Where the fuck is the bookmark? There it is. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Feel free to hang out in the Gaywatch break room while I'm gone, and give the stream a like if you're having a good time. I'll see you in a bit. All right, we're back. According to the poll that I put up at the last second, because I was too incensed, I wanted to know if I could still say that I called it. Because I was like, no, I always wait for a body. You wait until you see a body. You need a body on the page. You don't freak out until there's a body. And really, I mean, there is no body. It's just a soul left. But I feel like I was still like, no. See? You just wait. You just gotta wait because there's always, and, poll says, no, she got me on a technicality. Fine. She got me on the most technical of technicalities, I feel. We are on page 89 for chapter 302, which is called Soul Sundered at Wuan Palace. Wuan Palace had once been Xisheng Peak's loyalty hall. After Taishanjun declared himself its master, it was split into three, the front, the middle, and back halls. The Mei brothers were waiting at the doors by the time Shuheng trudged over. There's something wrong with this palace, said the elder brother as Shuheng drew close. It's full of illusion miasma. What's that? An arcane fog, Mei Hunshui explained. It's in the plum blossom forest at Teshui Palace year-round. What does it do? Asked Shuheng, face paling. Trespassers get lost in it. It has no effect on your own people, but outsiders will see a labyrinth of illusions and wander in circles. You know when regular folks talk about getting lost and ending up back where they started? It's like that. Shemei fell silent. They're stalling for time, Mei Hunshui said coldly. Something's happening in the back halls right now. What do you think? Asked Mei Hunshui. Can we go around it? Mei Hunshui shot him a look. Have you not spent the last 20 years of your life at Tashway Palace? Is that even a question? She's having way too much fun. His little brother hesitated, then awkwardly cleared his throat before turning to Shemei. There's nothing for it. We have to find the source of the fragrant fog and dispel it. Seeing the look on Shemei's face, he sought to comfort him. Don't worry. I'm great at this. I'm always ducking into the Plum Forest, Miasma, and Tashway Palace's back mountains to hide from girls chasing me. I'll have this dealt with in no time. The mention of his admirers brought the storm clouds rolling over Mei Hunshui's face. Why do you sound so proud of it? His voice was freezing. Shemei wasn't in the mood to listen to them banter. He strode forward and pushed open the doors of Wushan Palace. Are we getting a side quest real quick? The red lacquered doors creaked open like the stinking maw of a vengeful ghost. Candles flickered within the waiting silence. Shemei stepped over the threshold, registering the faint floral scent. When he turned, the Mei brothers were gone. They'd likely all see different sights until the fog was dispelled. Until then, they were on their own. A familiar voice rang out from the lofty throne. Shemei. Cold wind gusted through the dark and diaphanous drapes hung in the hall. Startled, Shemei cried, Moran! It's you, right? Moran rasped. Have you come? Shemei swallowed hard. Nerves wound taut as he walked further into the dimly lit hall with Shuheng held before him. He brushed the layered drapes aside with the tip of his sword and beheld the speaker. Atop a lofty dais sat a man sprawled on a gilt throne with his eyes closed, his face handsome and pale beneath a beaded crown. His brows were dark and his features sharp, his nose straight and finely shaped. His thin lips were pursed in an unreadable expression. Jin. Now we gotta deal with his hallucination. The pallor of his face was unnatural, tinged a corpse's ashy gray, the effects of some terrible poison. A platter of fruit sat in front of him, replete with rosy apples and indigo grapes. The richest colors of the realm were arrayed before him, but the man on the throne didn't so much as glance at the plate. Was it an illusion? Was it real? Shemei couldn't tell. His ears rang. When he came back to his senses, he heard his own voice speaking. Moran, you... Tishanjun's eyes remained closed, as if in sleep. What is it? Perhaps the man atop the throne looked too fragile, or perhaps Shemei had already vented his rage in the pouring rain earlier. Facing the illusion, Shemei felt more weariness than anger. Why did you do all of this? Is this a second life for you? You and Shizun, are you two really... What was the point of asking all this? He didn't even know if Moran would reply. Still, he mumbled blankly, giving voice to the questions that had piled up in his heart until they'd nearly crushed him beneath their weight. As expected, Taishanjun's only answer was a low hum. His eyes fluttered open, and he looked at Shemei through the flickering light and shadow. Come to think of it, it's been 2 years since the last time you and Shizun met face to face, since your farewell at Kunlun Tashway Palace. Shemei faltered. What? Moran smiled faintly. Shemei, do you miss him? Shemei shook. What do you mean, Kunlun Tashway Palace? What do you mean 2 years? What are you saying? The illusion in front of him was merely replaying Taishanjun's final conversation with Shemei, just before the Moran of the past life had succumbed to the poison. These were Taishanjun's last words. The miasma took on whatever form it willed, and coincidentally shaped the scene of their last meeting in the past life. But this version of Shemei had no inkling of any of this. He was bewildered and infuriated, vexed and afraid. He glared at the man on the throne and shouted, What the hell are you talking about? Taishan eyes seemed to focus on the space just behind him, as if looking through the real, live Shuimeng to fix upon an incorporeal spirit. Give him back to you? How foolish. Why don't you use your brain to think a little? Shizun and I share such an intense hatred for each other. How could I allow him to live in this world? Shuimeng fell silent. Yes, this was an illusion. Even if he said nothing, Taishan would continue unhindered. He was talking to someone Shuimeng couldn't see. But what was he talking about? Shuimeng's ears were still ringing. He let Taishan words wash over him, incomprehensible. The man on the throne had eyes so cold and crazed, so dark with conflict and obsession, that Shuimeng felt chilled all over. This wasn't his Gaga. He didn't know this man. Are you trying to remind me that he once beat me so hard I was left covered with cuts and bruises? Taishan continued malevolently. That he made me kneel before all to confess my crimes? Or did you want to remind me that for your sake, for the sake of all these insignificant nobodies, he stood in my way at every turn, ruining my great endeavors time and again? This tyrant resembled an ailing dragon, desperate to appear fierce even as he lay exhausted in the mud. His mutterings grew increasingly insane. He looked cruel and vicious, but he was so very tired. Still, said Taishan, we were once master and disciple. His body is resting in the Red Lotus Pavilion at the southern peak. He's been very well preserved and lies there among the lotus blossoms, looking like he's only fallen asleep. His corpse is maintained by my spiritual powers. If you miss him, don't waste your breath here with me. Go now, before I die. Shuimeng climbed the steps of the dais. Shui Huang clenched in his clammy hand. What are you talking about? This is not dialogue that he says. Who died in the last life? Whose corpse rested in the Red Lotus Pavilion? Whose corpse was maintained by Emperor Taishan spiritual powers to keep from rotting? Who? Between Taishan ravings and the grave he'd seen at the heaven-piercing tower, Shuimeng knew the answer in his heart. But shards of ice seemed to stab through his temples, preventing him from thinking. He was shaking so hard his lips were quivering. Who was dead? Who was dead? Shuimeng's features twisted. He charged up the dais and grabbed Moran's collar, but his fingers slipped through the illusion. Taishan face was inches from his. Go, Taishan rasped. Go see him. Without my spiritual powers, he'll turn to dust. If you don't make it before I die, it'll be too late. Taishan closed his eyes in exhaustion. The poison was doing its fatal work. But Shuimeng's eyes were wide open, his whole body shuddering. How had things come to this? What absurd history had played out in this world? You killed him. Shuimeng's voice cracked on the verge of breaking. You killed him. No one answered. Were you reborn knowing everything? Did you know it all from the start? Of course there was no response. But Shuimeng's questions flooded out of him. Many answers in this world brought no relief, only more suffering. But the question still had to be asked. Cruel truths or tender lies? Between the two, which was an act of love and which of hate? If you knew, why did you lie to us? Gah, how could you lie to us? The tyrant's twitching face was right there before him. Nobody looked good in the throes of a poisoning. Blood trickled from the corner of Taishan mouth. He pushed himself upright, staggering to his feet, and shuffled out of the hall. Where are you going? Shuimeng reached out toward that insubstantial figure. His hands grasped something warm. Shuimeng flinched, and the floral scent around him faded. The black and gold silhouette walking into the dark shattered. Moran! Moran was gone. So was the illusion. Something in Shuimeng felt broken beyond repair. Illusion or dreamscape, past or present, which was real, which fake. The space-time gate had merged past and present lifetimes into one. Which events were real? Which Moran was true? Which self was his own? Misery etched pitiful lines into his gaunt face. Even his eyes were dull and lost. When his pupils finally focused, they held Mei Shui's reflection. Wakey, wakey. Mei Shui stood in front of him with his brother at his side. He let go of his hand and flicked him on the forehead. Shuimeng winced. It's over. Shuimeng took a moment to struggle back his senses. I'm sorry, he gasped. Mei Shui pursed his lips. Nothing to apologize for. Fog like this is really strange. The more you have on your mind, the scarier the illusion it'll form. Glassy-eyed, Shuimeng looked up at him. He still disliked talking to Mei Shui, but right now he was the only stable presence among so much formless shadow. What about you? He asked against his will. What did you see? Mei Shui's smile came a beat late. A few hundred women I've angered in the past decade or so. Oh, what a feast for the senses. A sumptuous sight. Little old me was in quite the predicament. What the fuck does that mean? Mei Shui's smile came a beat late? And he masked with, oh, it's a bunch of women. What does that mean? If I don't get answers in a bonus story, I swear to God. Shuimeng fell silent. At that moment, all three turned as a colossal explosion erupted somewhere in the back halls. Mei Shui's gaze was frosty. Sword in hand, he called, "Let's go." Shuimeng and Mei Shui followed him through the rain-swept middle hall and into the back of the building. A woman's lithe, white-gold silhouette was racing along the ridge of the roof. When she caught sight of them, she froze and looked down. A flash of lightning illuminated her face. Wuan Li. Mei Shui's tone was stern. A sharp cry came from ahead. Ignore them, Mu Jie, run! Wuan Li reluctantly leapt away. By the time Shuimeng and the others caught up, the back hall was in ruins. Broken wood and shattered tile littered the ground. Fire licked at the splintered beams and devoured the silk hangings. Red tongues of flame clawed at the sky, black smoke rolling outward like the tide. Among the wreckage, two swift white shadows clashed in violent combat. Where they went, sparks flew. Their silhouettes seemed to weave through the air as fast as lightning, tearing at each other over the ruins of the palace. The howl of the wind was joined by the shriek of clanging metal. As golden light crashed against blue, an explosion sent tiles flying. A massive tree had broken through the earth like a dragon roused. In answer, a blue tidal wave of spiritual energy surged up from the shattered rubble. The combatants arced through the air, one standing poised atop the skyscraping tree, the other at the crest of the towering wave. Shuimeng paled. Shizin! Regardless of what secrets he'd discovered, worrying about Chu Wanning was an instinct. Mei Shui narrowed his eyes at the swirling maelstrom. Shuming Jing. Indeed, the one locked in combat with Chu Wanning was his one-time disciple, Shuming Jing. Yet strangely, Shuming Jing was enveloped not in his own weak spiritual energy, but in the ferocious power that had once belonged to Taishan Jin. What showed of his skin was covered in black curse marks, his meridians terrifyingly prominent. Qua? How? If Taisha Jin's body's then what's he? Is there a battery somewhere? What? I was so it knocked me clear off my course. Where in the entire fuck? Shuimeng charged toward them. What's going on? Shemei! There was another boom, and Shuimeng was sent flying backward, outside the range of their battle. He staggered upright to see a golden barrier covered in high-tongue flowers blocking his way. Chu Wanning was sickly pale. Stay back, he commanded. Mei Shui stepped up beside Shuimeng. He studied Shemei's spiritual energy flow, unnaturally strong, and furrowed his brow. How odd. He's using his usual water-type attacks, but the energy released belongs to someone else entirely. A mere few moments had passed, but Wuan and Shuming Jing had already traded a dozen more thunderous blows. Neither held anything back. The force of their spiritual energy was so suffocating the other three could hardly breathe. Willow vines flared beneath the Beidou immortal's feet. In his hand was the golden sword Huaisha. The sword flashed, illuminating eyes sharper than the blade itself. He soared through the sky like a swallow, bringing Huaisha down on Shuming Jing. Chuaning! Came Shemei's twisted howl of fury. I spared you in both lifetimes, yet this is how you repay me. His fingers formed a sigil. A deep blue barrier unfolded in front of Shemei, taking the brunt of Chuaning's attack. Yet the barrier hadn't appeared out of thin air. It sprang from the scabbardless long blade locked against Huaisha. Bugui. Teishenjun's brutal strength coursed through Shemei's body. Even Bugui had misidentified its owner, accepting his summons and fighting on his behalf. Misidentified its owner? Shadows flitted through Chuaning's eyes. No, he said. Pardon me, Shadows flitted through Chuaning's eyes. No, he said. You killed me in both. I saw a comment in the chat and I wasn't really sure what it was referring to. But now... Where? We don't know where Moran's body is, do we? I was like, where is Moran's soul going to go? If we're going to get him corporeal again, where... We never found out where the fuck Chuaning put his body, did we? I hate her. I hate her. I hate her. I hate her. Oh my God, I hate her so much. And we still don't know where the fuck it is. But you know it's somewhere around here. Be hilarious if he just, you know, buried it in a familiar place. He withdrew his radiant golden sword. Shemei's barrier was already beginning to crack. Chuaning whirled in midair and landed a brutal kick on the largest fissure. He sprang back, then shot forward again. Huaisha extended. Thunder roared overhead. Heavy black clouds rolled across the sky, and in that storm that threatened to tear the world apart, Huaisha slammed through Shemei's barrier. Shemei raised Bugui to block, but he was no Mo Wei Yu. Putting that fucking mildly. He couldn't withstand Huaisha's power. The long blade fell from his hands point first, sinking into the ground with a drawn-out scrape of metal as the golden holy weapon stabbed toward Shemei's ribs. Shemei had flinched aside just in time. The blade missed his heart, but he was too late to avoid it entirely. Blood sprayed as Huaisha pierced Shemei's shoulder with the sound of tearing flesh, crimson streaming back along the blade and into Chuaning's palm. That was satisfying. Shemei collapsed, sprawled among the rubble. Yet after only a moment, he pressed a hand over the wound and crawled back to his feet. Fury and malevolence glittered in his eyes. Why must you try to stop me? What's the use in it? Will the dead return to life? Will your lives be improved? Will these worlds go back to how they were? Chuaning fluttered down from the skies and landed lightly on his toes. He stood amidst the rubble, soaked from head to toe and bleeding from his wounds, and regarded Shemei with deadened eyes. He looked nothing like the usual Chuaning. He'd meant what he said. The flower of eightfold sorrows had consumed the man he loved, so he'd died by Shuming Jing's hand in both lifetimes. This one and the last. It's too late. Don't you know you could have stopped all this? Shemei howled, teeth bared. His eyes were crazed. Rain poured down around them, but it couldn't douse the fires of his hatred. When you opened the space-time gate in the previous life and went to the past, you should have killed Moran, torn him to shreds and burned him until only ash remained. You could have killed him then and there. Chuaning's eyes were as cold as ice. Redemption? A second chance? Ridiculous. You wanted to save him, you didn't want to kill him, and that's how I got my hands on his newly strengthened spiritual core. It was only because of you that I could reforge Emperor Taishanjun and bring us this far. Shemei burst out laughing. His relentless stare held all the venom of snake fangs and scorpion stingers, dripping poison. He gnashed his teeth. Because you couldn't bear to do it. Didn't you want to stop me? If you'd resolved yourself to kill him then, that would have been the end. What room would there have been for me? You're the one who doomed these worlds. So what if you're Shuheng of the night sky, the Beidou immortal? What did you accomplish? Nothing. I only figured out the first forbidden technique by studying your rift in space-time. Without it, how would I have managed to open the space-time gate of life and death? You've played your part in destroying the world. His raucous laughter clung to him like a spider web, circled him like a vulture. Shemei collapsed, blood spilling from the corner of his mouth. The demonic markings on his body were fading, but he didn't care. He was bent on using the cruelest words he knew to condemn the man in front of him. Whatever bygone love or affection he'd had for Chuaning disappeared in the pouring rain. He'd underestimated Chuaning, or overestimated himself, or both. He'd been arrogant, convinced he could turn Chuaning into his own plaything. As long as he kept him on a tight leash, there was no harm in preserving him as a pet. There was no need to end his life. But now, really just... If I could do it all over again. Cold malice shone in those peach blossom eyes. Shemei's hand tightened on his bloody shoulder. I would have killed you for sure. The last of the curse marks disappeared from his skin. That powerful spiritual energy drained away from Shemei's body. He slumped backward, reduced once again to an ordinary butterfly-boned beauty feast. Shemei panted for breath, staring at Chuaning through the falling rain. He'd used the last lethal weapon he'd had. Divine borrowing. It was a technique he'd used once before, in front of the reborn Moran at the inn on Rainbell Isle. It wasn't much of an attack, just a magical pill made using Emperor Taishanjun's blood. With it, he could use Moran's strength for half an hour. And really not all of Moran's power. A bit less, but enough in many critical situations. He fucking would. But his time had run out. And he had failed to defeat Chuaning. He was out of options. He knew that all too well. Shuimeng's scalp prickled. Bewildered, he rasped, Shizun, Shemei! Shemei had fallen not far from where Shuimeng was standing. Shuimeng had spoken at no more than a murmur, but Shemei heard him and turned. Their eyes met. Shuimeng's mind went blank. Shemei watched him for a beat, eyes glittering. A miserable smile unfurled on that impossibly beautiful face. Young master, he whispered. Shuimeng flinched. Shemei's eyes were still those eyes he remembered. His face was still that face from his past. He was so fragile and wretched. He didn't say anything, but reached out wordlessly. Shuimeng was standing right by the barrier. If he took even one step closer, no, half a step would be enough, Shemei could Bugui, stuck in the ground nearby, suddenly radiated a blinding light. Everyone stared in shock, all eyes going to that blade of 1,000 battles. It flickered from crimson red to jade green, and back over a dozen times before a powerful force burst from it. "Watch out!" cried Meihan Shui. He grabbed Shui Meng, who'd nearly stepped out of the barrier, and yanked him backward. They watched as Bugui broke through the earth and flew into the raging storm. It streaked like a shooting star toward the forbidden area at the rear of the mountain, leaving a trail of fleeting brilliance in its wake. Oh, please, dear God, let it be a Thor moment. Let it be a Thor moment. If it's a Thor moment, I'm just gonna not be here anymore. The cultivators that had marched on the mountain and engaged the horde of pawns watched it arc across the sky in shock. What was that? What's going on? Shemei narrowed his eyes. He lay on the ground, watching the crimson light flickering in the back mountain. The red light filled his pupils. Curling his fingers into fists, Shemei closed his eyes and probed for the source. A moment later, his eyes flew open, his face alight with mad glee. Teishanjin! Chuaning whirled, his face ashen. Shemei started to laugh, a predatory glint in his eyes. He survived! He survived! Somehow he mustered the strength to get to his feet. Before anyone could move, he tapped his acupoints to stop his bleeding. With a whirl of his blood-soaked robes, he leapt up to the roof and threw himself into the gardens and away. Shizin, Shui Meng called weakly. But Chuaning couldn't tarry. He turned to Shui Meng, then to Meihan Shui. Please take care of him. He sprang into the air after Shemei. Shemei was quick and lithe. He rivaled his teacher in skill with the Qinggong lightness technique. The two of them sped along. Shemei couldn't shake Chuaning off his tail, but Chuaning couldn't catch him either. In the blink of an eye, they gained the back mountains. The scene that greeted them brought them both to a screeching halt, breathless with shock. I swear to fucking God, that's the end of the chapter. I swear to God. What? I swear to God, if I check we'll get to the chapter title in a second. If I check the fucking description for the stream today and the chapters that we are supposed to cover today doesn't include chapter 303, this next one, I will be out for blood. I'm literally clicking over there right now. I cannot see chat in this moment. Oh, good. Jesus Christ. I was about to say, if y'all, because Love and Tuxedo Cat handle divvying up the chapters for me so that I don't get chapter title spoilers, and it's just very helpful, and et cetera, et cetera. They're the ones that do that for me, because they have the knowledge. They know where the best places to stop and start are. If they had done that to me, Love and Tuxedo, y'all would too. Don't look at me with that face of innocence. Under the right circumstances, y'all would. They have been benevolent today. All right, we are on page 103 for chapter 303, which is called The Other Shui Meng. I don't know what the fuck is happening, but I do know it's like 4:49. So we're gonna. Are we holding hands? We should be holding hands again. We're always holding hands, like I said before, but every now and then we squeeze each other's hands. How about that? Yes. We're squeezing hands right now, right? Indeed. An abyssal ravine split the ground before the martyr's path, left when Chu Wanning had used the corpse destruction technique. Rain roared down its sides and into its depths. Above the ravine, a man dressed in robes of gold patterned black stood in the air with his back to them, the hilt of Bugue's long blade in his hand. Sensing their approach, his fingertips twitched. Slowly, he turned. It was as if someone had buried an axe in Chu Wanning's heart. Battered by the howling wind, he stared at the man in front of him in disbelief. Moran. How could this be? Not that it can't still end horribly. But, for this moment, that is the collective sigh of relief. Lightning flashed. Thunder shook the skies. The pallid light illuminated Emperor Taishanjun's blood-streaked face. Shemei couldn't help taking a step back at the horrific sight, but Chu Wanning was compelled closer. Taishanjun's face was crisscrossed with bloody slashes. Not just his face. Every inch of exposed skin was marred by red and weeping wounds. He resembled a corpse some butcher had tried to dismember with a dull cleaver, his whole body torn and cracking. Only his face retained some of his original handsomeness. Chu Wanning's lips were bloodless and pale. He stood in the pouring rain and stared at the mangled, walking corpse. The corpse stared back at him, his once bright eyes filled with bloody tears. Taishanjun was barely lucid. His memories and souls warred with each other. Perhaps overcome by the pain, he brought a hand up to his face. Between his fingers, dark blood ran with the rain. Why did you have to treat me like this? He spoke with Taishanjun's rage and Mo Zongshou's confusion, thick lashes fluttering. Chu Wanning couldn't say a word. Why did you have to kill me? He mumbled, eyes unseeing yet filled with Chu Wanning's reflection. His expression slowly metamorphosed into something softer and more helpless. Shizin, he murmured. Did I mess up again? No. Chu Wanning's voice was a whisper. Did I make you unhappy again? His voice crashed through Chu Wanning's head, demolishing any semblance of rationality. Was that Taishanjun in the rain? No. That was Moran. Be it Emperor Taishanjun, be it Mo Zongshou, both of them were Moran. Moran was drenched in blood. We were referring to him as Taishanjun literally half a page ago. Moran was drenched in blood. He staggered toward Chu Wanning, his face the white of death beneath streaks of crimson, his eyes open but unfocused, dark with formless heartbreak. How did I disappoint you this time? For you to treat me this way? The freezing rain seeped into Chu Wanning's bones, so cold he shivered. He watched Moran come shambling toward him. Moran was weeping, but all that ran from his eyes was blood. Please, don't whip me anymore. It hurts. Even I feel pain. No matter how slow or stupid I am when you beat me, it hurts. Shizhen. Chuaning's shivers became violent tremors. He was so racked by shudders he could no longer stand. He crumpled to his knees, curling in on himself beneath the furious downpour. Talons seemed to have ripped through his belly. At that moment, he was more like a corpse than Moran. I'm sorry, Chuaning sobbed. I'm so sorry. This is italicized. Your wounds were as deep as mine, but now I'm the one who spilled your blood. He knelt in front of Moran, hunched and shaking. Mustering all the courage he had left, he looked up, but the sight of the body he'd mutilated left him crying almost too hard for words. It's my fault. He didn't know where he'd gone wrong. Maybe a walking corpse that still had one soul wasn't truly a corpse, so the corpse destruction technique hadn't worked properly. Moran wasn't dead, but his mind was gone. All the suffering, madness, bewilderment, and misery he had endured poured out of him. He was Mo Wei Yu, Mo Zongsha, Tishan Jun, Ran. 1,000 shattered pieces made up this broken man. Moran. Moran's eyes flickered. He came to a stop. The puddles of rainwater at his feet slowly turning red. The ground was painted in his blood. After a beat, his face twisted with cruelty, the sight terrifying on that mangled face. As if another consciousness had seized control, he began pacing in circles as he raved. Chuaning, you despise this venerable one. You'd stop at nothing to kill this venerable one, isn't that right? This venerable one despises you too. I want to tear you to shreds, to gouge out your belly, to drag you to the grave with me over 100,000 lifetimes. You have no right to hold a grudge. You're the one who killed me. His sleeves billowed in the wind, and his eyes were wide with rage. So consumed was he by fury, it seemed he'd charge forth and crush Chuaning's throat in the next moment. But like a bowstring snapped at the moment of release, or a sword broken mid-thrust, there was only a loud crack. Blue light shot into Taishanjun's chest. His eyes went dark and his expression smoothed. He slowly straightened, standing cool and still beside the martyr's path. Chuaning turned to see Shemei clutching a boulder for support. His arm was still outstretched from throwing the talisman, his peach blossom eyes ruthless and glinting. That's enough reminiscing about the past. Gritting his teeth, Shemei shaped his fingers in a seal and stared at the mutilated Emperor Taishanjin. You know our priorities. If you're not dead, hurry up and finish those last 30 pawns, he panted. No more distractions. In the blazing spell light, Taishanjun's face, that had held both kindness and cruelty only moments ago, turned as flat as still water and cold as frost. The madness and resentment in his eyes vanished with the rest of his emotions. If we don't brutally murder this motherfucker, I swear... Taishanjun bowed to Shemei. The long blade in his hand lit up once more as he answered numbly, Yes, master. He raised his hand and set down a shield spell to protect Shemei. Then he took to the sky like an eagle, black robes flaring behind him as he soared toward the front hall. Yet someone stood in his way. Chuaning was soaked to the bone. His heart had been crushed to a pulp. He wanted nothing more than to fall apart, to crumble into mud or ashes and be swept away in the roaring storm. But he had to stop him. If only people's lives could be made a little easier. Wouldn't that be nice? Moran had said this to him once, long ago when he was lucid. No matter how much Chuaning hurt, how exhausted he was, he had to hold out to the very end. Waisha, Chuaning rasped. Come. Taishanjun stared as the familiar golden light gathered in his palms, brows drawn low. Waisha, the pouring rain, an endless sea of suffering. It was just the same as that day many years ago. They'd both given everything in that fight, pouring a lifetime of training into a battle that split the skies and torn open the heavens. How had that past battle between master and disciple come once again, through the deluge of time, to shake the mortal world again? Some things were simply fated to be. Just as Nangong So was doomed to die in his prime, Yuang Shi was forced to become a pretty young master, and Xisheng Peak was cursed to calamity. Tianjun and Chu Wanning were destined to cross swords in every lifetime. Whether born from love or hate, their fate was inescapable. Bugui, come. Jade green light illuminated Tianjun's eyes in the wake of that growled summons. Shemei had exerted the strongest possible control. There was no ripple of emotion in his eyes. They reflected Chu Wanning's lonely silhouette in the rain like a hellish mirror. Now is when Chu Wanning praises Tianjun and he wakes up. That's all. This kind of moment right here is where I have been like, yeah, but what happens when Chu Wanning praises Tianjun and that's enough to cut through, you know? I don't even have straws to cling to at this point. Bugui tore through the clouds, the long blade sweeping through the storm. Two figures, one black, one white, ravaged each other upon the churning winds, spiritual energy clashing. They traded blows too swift for the eye to see. The gale kicked gravel into the air, and water flew from their bodies like dust whipped up by the wind or sea foam from white-capped waves. Neither let their guard down for a moment. Both fought with all their strength until they reached the heaven-piercing tower. The force of their duel shook the earth. Everyone on and around the mountain sensed it and exchanged astonished glances. Is that Chu Wanning? Why is he fighting Moran? Aren't they on the same side? It's almost like you don't know. Now's not the time. Rain beat down like the hooves of war horses. At the top of Xisheng Peak, the golden light in Chu Wanning's hands arrowed toward Tianjun's chest. Before the light could strike, there was an ear-splitting boom. Flaming crimson exploded from Tianjun's palms with the power of a volcanic eruption, devouring the golden light like a flow of molten rock. Shattered tile went flying. Trees and plants were yanked into the air by their roots. Watch out! Jiang Shi, leading their forces against the pawns, was first to shout a warning. He raised a barrier to protect those around him, shielding them from the falling stone and towering trees. Yet even he faltered beneath the force of the onslaught. He spat a mouthful of blood, sinking to one knee. His teeth were stained red as he yelled, "Open barriers! I can't hold it off a second time." Finally, the cultivators with him roused themselves, summoning barriers with panicked haste. They looked up toward the heaven-piercing tower in shock. Mo Yu and Chu Wanning, what kind of strength was that? Before the tower, master and disciple were locked in fierce combat. Teeth gritted, Chu Wanning met Tianjun strike for strike. Aside from him, there was likely no one else in the world who could bear the brunt of this revenant's attacks. But Chu Wanning could. Tianjun's every lunge and leap were familiar, every movement something Chu Wanning had taught him right here at Xisheng Peak, perhaps in front of this very heaven-piercing tower. He'd personally adjusted Moran's posture and repeated the teaching mantras, guiding him from his beginnings as a fumbling youth to the clash of blades as equals. This was the second ultimate duel between Chu Wanning, the Beidou immortal, and his disciple Mo Yu, the Emperor Tianjun. The first time, Chu Wanning had come with some hope in his heart. He thought he could save this disciple that'd gone astray, so he'd done all he could. This time, Chu Wanning knew everything was over. Even if he won, the man he most wanted to save was lost forever. "Stand in my way if you want to die," snarled Tianjun. But Chu Wanning saw the young Moran practicing with his sword. The youth's forehead was sheened with sweat. As the sun peered over the horizon, he leapt from the thin bamboo poles and executed 3 strikes before landing smoothly on the ground. He turned to Chu Wanning with a toothy grin, his cheeks dimpling deeply. Shizhen, did I do it right?" "See? Praise him." All I'm saying. Flames pillared up from Tianjun's palms and shot toward Chu Wanning's chest. Chuaning dodged aside, and Taishanjun's bloody hand slid past his lapels, missing him by a hair's breadth. When Moran had sparred with him at the Red Lotus Pavilion, he'd used the exact same move. His palm had been smooth and well-shaped then, unmarred by injury. He'd looked so gentle as he turned to Chuaning and grabbed his hand with a smile. "That's enough. If we keep sparring, we're never going to stop." The long blade shrilled, the sword hummed. Chuaning remembered Yuliang village, when Moran had so excitingly dragged him over to watch the opera by the riverside. The copper cymbals had crashed, and the actor's strident voice had carried over the crowd. "My king has met his end." The painted faces had whirled on stage as Moran watched with bated breath, but when Chuaning tilted his head, Moran had instantly turned from the stories he'd longed to see since childhood, gracing him with a smile. "Do you like it?" His eyes had been pitch black and so very bright. Chuaning had thought the show tedious, every squeaking syllable out of the actors' mouths stretched for the length of 3. He hadn't understood why anyone would enjoy it, but now he wanted nothing more than to go back to that stage at Yuliang village. When the actor spat a blaze of flame at the river, it had seemed to set the waters themselves alight. If only that performance could have lasted a lifetime. If only. In his moment of distraction, Huaisha was knocked from his grip. It had happened just this way back then. After his holy sword tumbled from his hand, he leapt backward and summoned Tianwen. But this time, Taishanjun was even stronger. The point of that naked black blade was leveled at his heart before he could retreat. Taishanjun narrowed his eyes. His vision was a gray blur. He couldn't tell whom his sword was pointed at. All he knew was that his enemy was flagging. His opponent was like someone running through a field at night, surrounded on all sides by danger and swaying reeds, relying only on hopeless desperation. "A nuisance," he said tonelessly. He brought the blade down. A golden folding fan scythed through the air toward Taishanjun's face. He instantly retracted Bugui and flicked it up to block the blow, but the golden fan had been thrown with terrifying force. It knocked Taishanjun back a step. 3 beams of blue and red light streaked down from the sky like bolts of lightning, caging Taishanjun in. "Who's there?" he snarled. He couldn't move. All he could do was gnash his teeth and roar, "Show yourselves!" In the swirling storm, 3 hazy figures stood atop the heaven-piercing tower. They leapt down with the rain and landed lightly on the steps, their faces coming into view. One had an irreverent cast to his features, a fur coat over his shoulders, and a pendant adorning his brow. Another wore his golden hair tied back and out of his freezing cold eyes. The man who stood at the front looked to be 30 or 40 years of age. He was dressed in silver blue armor, his eyes sharp and his expression stern. A scar crossed his left brow. There was no arrogance in him, only a steady competence that brought Shui Jingyong to mind. The man raised his hand and caught the golden fan that'd come whizzing back. He looked up, his eyes touched by age. The interlopers were the May brothers from the past life, as well as... Lightning crackled through the skies. Chuaning stared at the man's face. So this was the other world's Shui Meng. That was the end of the chapter. As you could see. When we come back on Tuesday, we'll be on page... Do they consider this? It has to be one. We'll be on page 113 for chapter 304, which, as you may have seen, is called Their Previous Life. Are you kidding? Are you fucking kidding? We were just talking about how in the book chat, I believe there's 4 Mei Han Shuis technically and 2 Shui monks. We were literally talking about that came out of our mouths. We were when I was making the Deadpool for today on who was gonna fucking die, we brought up the fact that there's actually 4 Mei Han Shuis and two Shui monks. And now here they are. That's far too many fucking Mei Han Shuis, first of all, and double the amount of Shui monks. The fan fiction goes crazy, and that's where we have to stop for today. Overwhelmed. Over fucking whelmed. The ways in which it has all built towards this last volume, basically, last 2 volumes really, is fucking sick and twisted and diabolical, and I really fucking hate her. But if the difference in the clashes of OG timeline and this timeline in some way comes down to the difference between Moran and Shemei being brothers or adversaries, I will track her down. I will fly to China. We already know that one of the chief differences between the OG timeline and this timeline that's obviously played things out in a different way, even though we wound up at the same place, has been, whether or not Wuan and Moran loved or hated each other, or really whether Moran loved or hated Wuan. We already know that. That's already going places. We are aware. But if it comes down to whether or not Moran and Shemei were brothers or not, I need to go. What the fuck am I supposed to say at the end of streams? Thank you for being here. Like I said before, we have book chats on Tuesdays and we have a few things happening on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We have book chats at 2:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to talk about what we've read immediately in the previous reading stream, and then we have these streams from 3 to 5. So from 2:15 to 5, it's very gay reading over here, and there's something else I'm supposed to say. Thank you again for being here, and please have a lovely weekend, and I'll see you here on Tuesday. And the most important part, I at least remembered this, the most important part is to take care of yourself.